Good evening. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside, and I'm very happy that you're with us tonight. It's Tuesday night, time to party with my good friend, Maleka McDonald. How are you, sir?
Hey, Rob, I'm great, man. Thanks for having me back.
Is it weird that it still freaks me out that you're like on an island somewhere and we can still do this together? I mean, it's kind of
I
crazy.
mean, the fact that it's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon and everybody else is getting ready for dinner time or maybe bedtime.
Oh, bedtime. Yeah, it's getting ready. No, it's party time, man. You're here. So I thank you, my friend, for being on here again. We always have a lot of fun when you're here. If you're watching live, please chat along with us in the chat. If you want to throw a super chat, if you please give us a thumbs up and a like so that everyone can find this video. We're excited about tonight's feature because we went to you, sir, as our expert on Lilo and Stitch. We went to you as our expert on Moana. And so rather than throw like Johnny Capahala at you or whatever the new Doogie Howser is, we are coming to you with your choice of movie, and you picked Mary Poppins. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about that. Why would you pick Mary Poppins?
Because I also can't pronounce Doogie Kamealoha MD. Or I think that's how you did that. I was hoping that wasn't going to be the one you asked me for. You know what? Mary Poppins, my favorite Disney movie of all time. And I figure, if we're going to keep going back to these Hawaii movies, at least let me do the one that got my love for Disney started. And this was it. This was the one that ignited the Disney passion, the magic in my life from the very beginning.
That's awesome. And again, when you said that, I was like, all right, Mary Poppins is on hold for him. No one else gets this one because that's exciting. So this movie happened. And the other thing that happened was you were like, now the original, right? We're not doing Mary Poppins Returns. We're doing the original one. Yes, the OG, Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins. 1964, this movie came out. Now, there are a lot of There's a lot of movies about this. The Boys talks a little bit about the Sherman Brothers and the music that they did. Obviously, Saving Mr. Banks, about the effort it took for Walt to get the rights to use this movie. And then there's the sequel. But we're gonna kind of try to focus in on this one. You know what? It's 2 hours and 22 minutes long, which I didn't remember that. But for a family or kids movie, that seems pretty long, right?
Watching it again recently for just sitting down and sitting for 2.5 hours, it seemed like a long time, and I didn't remember it being that long, but that had to be an eternity back then. I can't imagine many families going out to the movies for 2.5 hours. That had to be the equivalent of The Godfather back then, this
Right.
epic, massive movie time.
No, you're right, and honestly, again, when a lot of times I'll go to sit down and watch these movies, and I'll go, oh, it's only an hour and 45 minutes. That's great. I'm very excited. This was 2 hours and 22 minutes. I was like, it's Mary Poppins. But here's the other thing too: is we see so many clips of Mary Poppins all the time, and I know you're a Disney Parks fan, and you watch Disney specials just like the rest of us do. There's so many of those clips and things that even if you've never seen Mary Poppins, you may feel like you have seen Mary Poppins because of all the highlights that we see, and it's a classic Disney film. So when I sat down to watch it, there were a lot of things that I don't remember this. There was a lot of little scenes, and we'll talk about it as we go through, that I did. But did you have that same thing where you're like, this looks unfamiliar?
There were certain songs actually that I had forgotten were in the movie. There's one particular song that we'll talk about where I turned to Lauren and I said, did they add this in later? It's like, what? Why is this in the movie? And I you probably know the song I'm talking about. We'll get to that. But I was just kind of like, this doesn't seem like it was this long to begin with. Maybe I'm watching the director's cut or something.
Well, as we run through this, we're going to talk about the movie, we're going to talk about the cast, we're going to talk about the music, and then I'm going to hit you up with some trivia at some point. So, sir, you better be ready.
Okay.
But so this one. It's a musical, and it was a musical created for the screen, as opposed to today we see things like In the Heights that that take from stage and they adapt for the movies. This is made for the screen as a musical, and it opens up like a musical with an overture. So you hear a little bit of all the different music, which was amazing, all the music from the Sherman Brothers, which again we'll get to. But it has, it struck me that there's a little bit of everything in this movie. There's animation, live action, matte paintings, practical effects that were probably pretty amazing for 1964. It's got comedy, it's got drama, it's got everything you would want in a movie, and yet it's I don't know. There's a little something special about this movie, but. I mean, was there anything about it going back to it, and again, we're about to get into the movie itself, I swear, but going back to the original, that you felt like, I didn't remember feeling this or seeing this or thinking this?
I think the first thing to note is that it's a period piece in a period. So, like, as you watch it, okay, the movie's obviously from 1964, but at the same time, the movie is set in 1910. So it's already 100, plus years old by the time it's set in 19. The movie's ancient when it was set ancient times. So for modern audiences, it's going to feel really, really old. And that was something that I was watching it and I was thinking, wow, man, this thing takes place a gazillion years ago. And that was one of the first things to me watching it again today, where I was just like, wow, man, Disney's been around for a really long time, and he really liked things to be really ancient.
Yeah. Well, that's a weird way to say it, but I don't disagree with you. Main Street USA, Mary Poppins, the Carousel of Progress, all of them happen in that early 1900s era. So yeah, I agree with you. He was a man who was like fond of nostalgia, and I think that worked into all of Disney, which is why we're all nostalgic for Disney movies, parks, things like that all the time too. So yeah, I agree with you. Maybe
I didn't express it. Maybe my words failed me there for a second. But when you talk about 1910, when I think of Disney nostalgia and Disney parks, for example, when you walk Main Street USA and Disney parks, I guess I just didn't picture it as being early 1900s. I always just pictured it as being early childhood. That was just when we grew up. That's just how Disney was. And now as you look back on it, it's like, man, that was a century ago, and it just doesn't seem like it was that long ago, because Disney keeps that magic alive.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if your childhood looked like Main Street, I mean, I know you got a little salt and pepper going on, but I don't think you're that old. So
no, maybe just because I spent a lot of time at Disney as a kid. I think that's what I was talking about.
The director of this movie was Robert Stevenson, who directed some other amazing things for Disney, including Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which also starred Mr. Banks, David Tomlinson. So
another one of my favorites. Great movie.
Are you a fan of that one too? Okay.
Yeah, I was. That would have been my second choice if this one was taken.
But also, we've already done Darby O'Gill, and then he also did Old Yeller, Johnny Tremaine, Kidnapped, In Search of the Castaways, Son of Flubber, The Absent-Minded Professor, Mary Poppins, The Monkey's Uncle, That Darn Cat. I mean, basically this guy directed some of our childhoods, like Herbie Rides Again and The Love Bug, Island at the Top of the World, The Shaggy DA. I mean, it's just on and on and on, and yet they all feel similar. Like, I can see Herbie and Mary a little bit similar, but they're also very different in the fact that this is a full-blown musical. And when it opens up with Mary in a cloud with no context. And so if you didn't know back in 1964 what was going on, I mean, what would you have thought about, like, where is this movie going? Are we high?
Well, she was high in the clouds. That's the first image of the whole thing is seeing her in the clouds and it's so beautiful the way they have it set, where she's just casually sitting there. The neat trick where she's pulling up her umbrella, while she's sitting there sipping on her or reading her book, and just hanging out, and her stuff keeps floating down into the clouds. That's probably one of my favorite gags in the movie.
I have a freeze shot of that here, where she's just kind of touching up the makeup a little bit before she makes her grand entrance, and she's got the the nice scarf on and everything. And yeah, no, you're right. It is pretty awesome. I feel like you're drinking a better beverage than I am. I'm only doing this. So I
I
guess
just got
it's
an iced coffee here.
okay. All right. Well, again,
A little
it's
afternoon pick me up.
the day is still young. I get it. And then you know, she's flying in, and you see Bert, and he's doing the whole one-man band thing, and you're like, oh, it's Dick Van Dyke doing a British accent. It's funny to me that they would choose Dick Van Dyke, and it was perfect. I mean, it was a perfect decision.
Yeah.
I questioned Michael Keaton as Batman when I was a little kid, and that ended up working out okay. But with him being British in the movie, I feel like people from England would have been probably offended by his portrayal of someone who is British. No?
You know, going back and seeing the movie, I feel like everyone who reviewed the movie online was offended by his accent. It's sad. IMDb is brutal, man. It's just going back and seeing people's comments on Dick Van Dyke's accent. People are not kind on the internet.
Well, it's a problem, governor. Yeah, it's apologies. It's just, yeah.
See,
And
they're going to come after you now.
that's all right. They all know where I live. It doesn't matter. So the idea that he would play, and especially as much as we look for realism these days, the fact that it would be a British, an American playing a British actor is weird, except for the fact that they came back to that with Lin-Manuel doing the British thing. You know, in the next movie. So, and then you know, Bert he's a jack of all trades. He's kind of like a street performer. You know, we find out through the whole thing he's got lots of other jobs, but he's doing this one man band thing, and it's like all fun and games, and all of a sudden he freezes, and he's like, oh, there's something mysterious happening. And I'm thinking that still works. Like that moment still works, even though I've already seen it. And it's like, wait, what is it, Bert? What do you feel like's happening here? It's just really a fun, I think, way to open that up, and then he breaks the fourth wall, and he talks to us, and he's the only one that seems to know we're there. Do you think it? I mean, is he doubling as the narrator? Is that just what's happening here?
Well, I think that plays again to that Disney magic, right? I mean, the one thing about Disney and everything in Disney theme parks is that you're in on the joke. Right, you're part of the mystery. So you know, Mickey always gives you a wink. You know, there's always a nod to you in that. You know, everybody else doesn't really know what's going on, but you and we're cool. And you know, when he does that, that's part of it, man. It's like, hey, come on with me. We're going on this trip, and that's, I mean, for me, that just sucks me right in.
Yeah, and the thing is, at this point, again, it's all just kind of disjointed. There's this lady in the clouds, there's this dude who's doing the one-man band thing, and then he thinks he knows something, and then he's talking to me. That's a weird 5 minutes to start this movie. But then...
It's true, they haven't brought it home yet.
But then he's like, oh, Cherry Tree Lane, I'll take you. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, no more accent. He's like, I'm going to take you, I'll take you there. And he's like walking you down the street. And then he sees the Admiral at the top of the building. And there's a dude at the top of a building. It's a house with sails and a cannon.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I admit. The first 15 minutes of this movie is hard to get through if you don't know what's about to happen. Hearing you talk us through this, I start to wonder whether or not this movie should have been a success. But you know what? It does get better.
I mean, it's not. It's not that it's bad though. It's just a little. I mean, it's a little trippy, right?
It is a trip. It absolutely is. This whole scene with the guy with the boat and the house, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it necessarily plays into the whole story of the movie. I mean, I'm sure it came out of the Mary Poppins books and series of books, which I know nothing about. And I almost guarantee you it was part of the original authors, like they had to have it in the movie. But, you know, I don't know that it translated, man. It was just bizarre.
Well, and you know, the thing that really gets me too is the scene where the cannon goes off, and they're like, they notice what time it is, and they're like, yeah, exactly, and they're like, stations, and they all run to their stations and hold everything in place. And the choreography of that, just the blocking, is beautiful. And like the piano
Yeah.
moves into place, and this falls down here, and then it all goes back to where it's supposed to be. And she hits the wall, and the pictures go back into place. Like, you know what? We deal with this all the time. It's just a thing. This is. I feel like if Mr. Banks is this successful, he should just move. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, my favorite part of that scene is that Mr. Banks never touches a thing during those choreographed moments. Everyone's in their battle stations, and he's usually just standing there, unawares that the world is falling down around him.
well, and that's kind of the crux of the movie, right? That he is kind of unaware.
Sure.
And it wasn't until this may be my first watching of this movie since watching Mr. Banks or Saving Mr. Banks. And the idea is in Saving Mr. Banks, if you watched it, and no spoiler here is is that Walt realizes that the movie is about the dad needs the saving, not the kids. And so watching it through that lens the next time, I kind of see so much of that in this movie now that I didn't see before, because it seemed to me it was all an adventure for the kids.
Yeah, I think as an adult watching the movie, even without having seen Saving Mr. Banks, you do see that context. I mean, I know the reference of Saving Mr. Banks. I haven't actually seen that movie, but I do know that there is a reference to that in this movie. And by the end of the movie, he comes around. He starts to. The movie really is about his transformation in this family, not just this silly adventure for the kids. And you don't see that as a kid. It's one of those things where this movie is really two movies. It's one for children and it's one for adults. And that again, that's part of that Disney magic.
So we've already heard at this point, as we're going through it, a couple of songs, and so we've heard the overture, and then we have heard Sister Suffragette. Is that the song you were talking about that you hadn't heard before?
No.
Okay, all right then.
No, I don't. No, no. That's not particularly the one that. I mean, that one's strange, but I like that one. I felt like that one was appropriate enough.
Well, and it puts you in that time frame because you're understanding
Right.
what's
Yeah.
going on
It
at
was,
that
it was
time.
definitely for the time period.
Glennis John, who plays the mom, is very into the movement, and so it's kind of saying like this is what was happening during this time. There's no shortage of powerful women role models in this movie between the domestics, as they call the maid and the cook, and Mary and the mom. So I think it's just to say that there was this is something that was going on at the time. And this is something she was really into. I think later on that's very sad to me because when Bert brings the kids home near the end, which we'll get there, but she seems so disconnected, and it almost makes me feel bad for the mom, like there needed to be a Saving Mrs. Banks. But it's not her movie; it's
Yeah.
about saving him.
Well, there was as you look at the movie now in today's terms, the mom really, she deserves her own movie today. I mean, I certainly think that a modern Disney could certainly have a Mrs. Banks movie and talk about her, because she has a very strong character in this movie. I mean, first of all, she's part of this incredibly powerful movement at the time, the suffragette movement. This is she has this line right at the very beginning of the movie where she says something about how we think men are stupid, and that's like a big no-no in 1910. Men rule the world, and her first costume at the beginning of the movie is like a man's suit, and she sings this song about how women think men are stupid, and there's this women's lib movement, which was very modern thinking for the time. And that's really her moment in the movie, and it's kind of this powerful moment for women, and it sets the tone, I think, for the movie, showing that while Mr. Banks thinks he's the man of the house, it goes to show, and you learn through the course of the movie, he's anything but. Everyone else in the house rules the house, but him.
Right, and that kind of goes back to that whole he's a little clueless about everything that's going on. He really doesn't see anything. So, including the fact that when he first comes home, Katie Nana, the nanny, Katie Nana the nanny, is leaving the house, and he helps her because he's like, oh, hello, good day. Yeah, here, let me put this back on
Right.
top of your coach, and no, why are you
See you
exactly?
later.
No, why are you bringing a suitcase? No, what's happening? Are you due for vacation? Is it? I'm sorry, holiday. Is this what's going on here? I don't know. And so he's very clueless about everything. She leaves, and then once she leaves, then the new task is they need to hire somebody else because the
Right.
rest of the help isn't having it. That they need to watch the kids because the kids are trouble. So they
Right.
they start to write this whole thing about what Mr. Banks thinks they need, and they put this advertisement in the paper. But the kids have their own idea and they write their own. So there's that whole Perfect Nanny song that they do, which is actually a track on the soundtrack, The Perfect Nanny, because they both have their different opinions. And then he's like, this is poppycock. I'm assuming that's what he would say. And he rips up the paper and throws it into the fireplace, and then it magically goes up the fireplace. Which again, I'm looking at, and in 2021, if that happens in Shang-Chi, I'm like, it's computer. That's obviously how they did that. I'm looking at that going, how did they do? Was it little pieces of paper on strings, or did they like? I'm dumbfounded by the practical effects in this movie.
I have to agree. There is so much of that in this whole movie. These magical effects where things move on their own or they move in the opposite direction that they're supposed to. It happens so often in this movie, and I'm thinking, boy, this must have been millions of dollars in special effects back then. I can't imagine the cost and the technical know-how that it must have taken to make simple things like pieces of paper float up a chimney in this movie. And maybe I'm a simple person, but that just seemed like a very difficult thing to do in 1967.
I was impressed. I was
64,
impressed by a lot
whatever
of
it
it.
was
There's a
made.
lot of it that jumps around, like it doesn't look quite right, but that's okay. Like whether it's a
Yeah,
matte painting or they were on wires or whatever. But it's just, again, I'm very
yeah.
impressed for the time of what happened. One of our viewers in chat said, David says that P.L. Travers hated the Mary Poppins movie, which is, we had heard that too. And again, if you watch Saving
Yeah.
Mr. Banks, which will, that in that she's kind of fighting the whole way, and every time Walt introduces something new, she's like, "What are you doing to my masterpiece? Like, this is not at all what it should be," which is a shame
Yeah.
because he made it very consumable, this movie, and it was probably something that may not have stood the test of time. Maybe it would have. I don't know, but with this movie, it made it something very, very relatable to a whole generation and generations to come.
Yeah, I had read that as well, and I understood. I understood why the battle was there. I understood why it was. I mean, it was very different than the books, but it had to be, for what it was. And I think, for better or for worse, the movie as it is by itself is beautiful. I mean, look at it. We're still talking about it today. I mean, the movie is ancient, and
Yeah.
it's still a beautiful piece of work.
I mean, ancient. I mean, I wasn't alive when it
It's
came
older than
out.
you and me, Rob.
I was about to
Right?
say I wasn't alive when it came out, so it's fine.
Me neither. We're good.
So, yeah, I'm talking about it being old. There's after they've had this conversation about the nanny, he sends them back to the nursery. They look a little too old to be in what today we would consider a nursery. Go to your room, but I mean, that's what it is. It's the nursery. They share this room.
Right.
It feels weird in 2021 for them to be calling it nursery.
Yeah. Today, so it'd be the TV room. They'd go back to their Xbox room. They'd be playing video games.
You go to the bonus room.
That's it. Go make TikTok videos.
So then we see all the nannies lined up outside, and they all look like they're lined up for a funeral. They're all wearing black, and they're all just very stern looking. And then here comes Mary. She's flying in. This is her moment. This is the moment she has chosen to come in, and they all start to fly away. And the children are up in the window. And here's what I have a problem with, my friend. The children are up in the window laughing. Some sort of a cyclone has just grabbed 30 innocent women and pulled them to God knows where, maybe their death, And the kids were like, "Oh my gosh, look at her! Is that wrong? I feel like that's wrong."
I don't know. It's pretty hysterical to watch. These women are standing there like witches at a funeral, and all of a sudden they are flying away in the most hysterical way. Again, Disney magic, like it just tumbling away like tumbleweeds in the wind. That was another great magical moment in the movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is happening. I mean, these poor women, like, if this is actually happening, I'm feeling bad for them. But I don't know. It's just, and again, you're right. It
I
is
love it.
because the way that they all like go, it seems like there must have been a lot of harness wire work happening in different directions. And I would love to see some kind of behind the scenes image of what they were all
Yeah.
actually doing while that was happening. Meanwhile, there's a little
Was there
dog.
any? I never saw. Every once in a while you see a Disney behind the scenes and you think how it was made. Thing. I never saw anything about that with Mary Poppins. I almost feel like, this is one of those. The magician doesn't want to show us how it was made, kind of things. Because there was so much about this movie where I would have loved to have seen how some of these scenes came to life.
Well, on Disney Plus, one of my biggest complaints, and anybody who watches the show on a regular basis would know this, is that they don't put all of the bonus features on. They do some, which shows me they can do some. They should do more. They should do all. Often you'll go to a movie like Darby O'Gill, and it'll be clip. It's not a trailer. It's not a behind the scenes. It's not a deleted scene. It's just a clip of the movie just so you get a taste of what you're about to get into. And so I feel like there should be more. Now, luckily on this one, there is some bonus features. There is a deleted song. There's a short about another P.L. Travers chapter or piece of Mary Poppins. There's also a kind of a musical history with Richard Sherman, Julie Andrews, and Dick Van Dyke, which was done a while ago. And then there's like the trailer. So there are some things behind it, but there's also an episode of Prop Culture, which I don't know if you watch that series, but there is an episode of Prop Culture that they do, I believe, about Mary Poppins. So, but you're right. It's not like the whole wires and green screens and matte paintings and all that kind of stuff that
Yeah,
you get
show
to
me what a
see.
green screen looked like in 1964. That would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, it was in black and white. No, it wasn't in black and white. So Mary comes in, and she just pops in the door and walks in, and she starts like really kind of putting Mr. Banks like on his heels. He doesn't really know what's happening, and before he knows it, he's hired her, and and she's like, I'll try you out, and then she like goes up to the kids' room. So we've let a stranger just straight up walk into the house and head up to the nursery. Again,
Pretty much.
yeah. I mean, but it's Mary,
Yeah,
so
his lack of detail. Yeah, again, he has no idea what's going on in his house. Just another
so
proof.
Nanny goes upstairs, and Mary goes upstairs, and she's up there, and one of the first thing is she wants to see if the kids measure up, and she does the tape measure gag, which I'm not sure I remember that, but that's awesome. And that's where the practically perfect in
Perfect
every
in
way.
every way.
Yeah, so practically
Yeah.
perfect in every way. As a matter of fact, on Park Center last Sunday, one of our panelists, Stephanie, was wearing a practically perfect shirt. I mean, it's become kind of synonymous with this movie, but it's just that little blip where you get to see Mary Poppins practically perfect in every way, and that's kind of her. That's where we've introduced her, to my knowledge. This is the first time her name has come up, is on there, and the kids are like, "Oh, that's your name, Mary Poppins." And so I think it's it's a really neat thing to open everything up, and then the bag and the carpet bag. Again, going back to the effects, was really well done, and they almost do the magician trick where the magician puts his hand underneath because they put Michael under the table to go, there's no wires here.
Yeah. And I think I had read that there are certain gags that happen in the movie where the kids were not told what was going to happen in the scene. And so when you see look of awe and wonder on their faces, it's real. And as I understand it, I read this. I could be wrong. The internet sometimes lies. But that scene right there where those kids are looking flabbergasted is real. They didn't tell them what was going to happen with the carpet bag. And so when she's pulling these things out of the bag, they didn't know that was going to happen. And so they were genuinely surprised.
Yeah, I'm sorry you used the word flabbergasted. We'll cut that out in the tape. That's very sorry. Yeah, no, that is I had not heard that myself. I think that's very cool. I think well, like my dad used to refer to my wife as having a Mary Poppins bag because no matter what the kids needed, she had it somewhere in her bag, whether it was like a Kleenex or some suntan lotion or whatever. And so, he just always called it the Mary Poppins bag. So every time I see that, I always get kind of sentimental about that. But again,
Every good mother has that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It just goes, but it goes back to the whole, like, how much of it's ingrained in our culture, this movie, and the little things that people take away from it as they go through. So I love that bit. And then they do the spoonful of sugar at that point.
Song. Yeah.
No, do they not do that? They may do that later.
Sugar. Yeah. No, I think that's right off the bat.
Yes, because they want to they want to clean up the nursery, and she's trying to tell them that this is how you're going to do it. It's just with a little bit of fun. Now there's a scene in there there's a robin, I think, on her finger, and I'm like, I don't know, that part seemed a little weird to me, like bringing it. I guess that was like maybe like an early animatronic kind of a thing or a puppet. I don't know.
A few things happened in that scene where there was movement and puppetry, and there was an animatronic bird. There were birds on the trees outside. The whole scene was fun. You don't have a clip of that?
Well,
I was hoping you might. That was a fun scene.
YouTube will yell at me if I play an actual clip. So I have. I mean, I can do.
Yeah, we don't want to get this show canceled. This is better than anything else on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, so here's one where like the beds are being made up, with this magic, which again there had to have been so much staging that happened during that. The pictures were crooked on the wall and then they were straight, and the blocks fall into her arms, which you're like, did they do that backwards? But then she throws them into the toy chest. You're like, so Yeah, it was really well done.
Yeah, you're like me. I always try to figure it out as I go through it. I ruin rides at Disneyland for myself as I try to figure out how they're all. How does that? How are they doing that? And sometimes I figure it out and I ruin it. But that's my whole thing. Once I watch this movie, I'm like, oh, that's how they did it.
I did that for my sister once, where I was talking about the Haunted Mansion. I said something about how the show building takes up this space, but she was like, show building? I was like, did you really think that entire thing was happening in that small house? Is that really what you thought was going on there? I don't know, but yeah. Don't ever spoil the magic. Speaking of magic, Michael was having a little bit of a problem getting that magic going, trying to snap his fingers over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So meanwhile, like, Mary and Jane, they got it. They got it figured out, and they clean up the entire room. Mm-hmm. They start to go on an outing. I love that too. There's always an outing. I'm gonna have to start using that in my vernacular. Outing. Yeah, I'm gonna have an outing to McDonald's to get some Happy Meal toys. I'm going to an outing to Publix. Just gonna take an outing.
Hard to have an outing these days when we spend all of our time on Instagram and Facebook. It's like I need to have an outing where I just put my phone down. That would be enough of an outing for me.
That's fair.
Just gonna have an outing where I literally look out.
You know what though? I feel like you probably miss out more on life than I do, being able to be as close as you are to, like, I don't know, the ocean. Beaches, pools.
You're right. I'm ashamed at how little I see the ocean, honestly.
Are you?
It's shameful. It's shameful.
How far is the ocean from you right now?
It's a mile. I can see it from here. I can see it from my window. It's ridiculous.
You're useless.
I'm embarrassed.
You're useless. This is horrible. This is horrible. Anyway, back to this movie. See, this is why we talk to you about Hawaii, because you're there and it's awesome. So they go on an outing. They find Bert. We find out that Bert and Mary are, they have a history, but it doesn't necessarily seem like it's a romantic history. It just is they have a history together. And then, they start playing around with imagination, and Bert's trying to show the kids, well, you could get away. You go here, you go here. And then he tries to jump into the painting and it doesn't work. And Mary's like, fine, I'll do it, and they go and they jump into the painting. And I love that once they do jump, it's a chalk drawing, and once they jump into it, they kind of brush the chalk off. I think that was a neat little touch to say, okay, no, we didn't get transported to Oz. We're actually in this chalk drawing.
Yeah, that was a really cool thing. And it was something. It was a reference to something we don't get, but these chalk drawing artists that I guess are a thing or were a thing in 1910 England. These guys would draw on the street and they would put a little hat out for money. It was a way to get money other than just begging. He's like, look, I'm an artist. I make art. It's temporary art. It's going to be gone as soon as the rain comes. But here, throw me a penny or two and see what happens. But that reference to whatever city life was like back then for them was this little magical moment for the movie. And as they jump into it, it becomes this magical moment for us watching it. And what I liked about it is that even though they're in this painting, and this is where the movie like really takes off, right? Magic wise, they're in this green screen moment, everything's animated. Something that I noticed before and after that scene is that even when they're in real life London, the sets that they built there, those flats that are in the back of those beautiful sets, those are also drawn in kind of a cartoon Disney sort of painting sort of way. So the whole movie almost kind of takes place in a drawing, if you really kind of watch it again and just kind of take a look at it. So, the whole thing is animation, real life people in animation, which is something I really appreciated that they did. And I don't know if that's just the way that Disney did things back then or the way that the set was designed this particular way, but just all of the sets in every scene is this beautiful painted backdrops, that really make it look beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. And the matte painting thing is something that I don't know that they would need in 2021 because they're all using computer generated. But when you look, there must have been some masterpieces that were just destroyed after a movie was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because they don't do it anymore. I mean, now it's just as easy to put someone in a green screen room and create this imaginary world digitally, and it looks great on television or in movies. But yeah, you don't get those realistic masterpieces. I'm a tactile person. I like to see that real backdrop in the back there. I think it makes a difference.
The chat would like to jump into that Hawaii sunset photo.
Okay, right here. Yeah.
Yeah, like if we could just do that, if we could all magically
Let's just do it.
If we just be at your place, yeah, where they have luau's and
yeah. All right.
Also in the chat, our friend Desi is pointing out that the bird on her finger that we talked about is in a scene in the Carousel of Progress. So apparently this is the bird from that scene, and which would have tracked because the Carousel of Progress, the original one, was 1964 World's Fair. This is the 1964 movie. So, yeah. Also, somebody who's been on Deep in the Plus with us a lot, Katie, it's her birthday, and so Chief Leaf has given a $10 donation to say happy birthday to Katie. So
happy birthday, Katie!
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, happy birthday, Katie. So, lots of fun stuff happening. Lots of stuff going on in the chat. Thank you, guys. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about the movie. So, and while they're in the painting, a lot of that stuff, or painting within a painting, as per your theory, a lot of that stuff that we know of, like supercalifragilistic, Jolly Holiday, they happen inside the painting scenes. And so that's kind of cool that, that to me could have been its own movie, like that series.
I think you're right. They could have broken that out. Like today, Disney, they would have had 3 or 4 separate animated movies just based on the picture drawings.
Yep. So let me stop for a second and hit you with some trivia. Because again, I'm going to go ahead and say this is your favorite Disney movie. I'm sure it's not. But
I would say, yeah, it's my favorite. It was my first favorite movie. Julie Andrews was my first Disney crush.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Tell us more. No, we'll talk about Julie in a second.
No.
So there was a bunch of trivia that I came up with in watching this that you should probably know, and I'm going to go from easiest to hardest. So they live in Cherry Tree on Cherry Tree Lane. What is their address? What is the number?
Ooh.
Ooh, see, I thought this was easy.
It is. Number 9, right? Number 9, Cherry Tree Lane. No.
Number 9 plus 8 equals
number 17.
Yeah, you got
Cherry
it.
Tree Lane?
Yeah, you figured it out. Yeah, number 17, Cherry Tree Lane. The
Nice.
admiral who lives next door to them. What is his name?
I don't know.
Admiral Boom.
I don't know. Oh, of course.
Which I thought was
I should've gotten that one.
absolutely ridiculous. I was going to ask you what year this took place, but you led off with that 1910, so that doesn't track. We were talking about the animated scene, and hopefully everybody's playing along in chat about this because I think there's some cool stuff here. So Neko in chat knew it was 17. And also knew Admiral Boom. So she's 2 for 2.
Right on. Neko.
Yeah.
Neko
All right.
wins.
So when they're on the carousel, so they go into the painting, they go out, or they go to a county fair, they get on the merry-go-round, and they're all on horses. What color is Mary's horse?
It was pink. She gets on a pink horse. Come on. No?
Close.
Blue?
Michael's on blue. Now you just throw it. All right. So
Yellow.
So yellow or gold is what Bert is on. Jane is on pink, and Michael's on blue because of they're the pink and blue. So they're in a nursery.
Okay.
They're living by nursery stereotypes. Purple.
Oh, yeah, it was purple.
Yeah,
It was
it's a purple horse.
Hers talks to her too, or like she communicates with her horse at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In that same
F
scene.
for paying attention. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I find this to
I
be
didn't know
fun.
there was going to be a quiz.
It's all in good fun. There's no grading on the quiz.
Okay,
You're doing
got it.
horribly,
Okay.
but there's no grading on the quiz.
Got it. You got it.
So, in that same scene, we'll stop when you get a couple right. In that same scene,
Okay.
there's Bert's wearing this very recognizable, almost ice cream man outfit.
Yes. Yeah.
What color are his socks?
His socks? Well, he's wearing this candy cane outfit.
Right. I will give you a hint.
Socks.
The tie and the socks are the same color.
Yellow.
Blue. Sorry, dude. I'm sorry. I
I had primary colors to choose from. I could.
You know what? You could have really embarrassed me and stepped up and said, I'm colorblind, right? And I'd be like, oh man.
That's it. Well, the original movie wasn't in color. They colorized it in 1984. So
I feel like
No?
that's lies.
That's
if
false.
that makes sense.
That is fake news.
Yeah, I feel like
is
that's not
fake.
This is not a great picture of it, but I'm gonna show you a picture of his.
Oh yeah, good. Show me a pic.
Yeah, of his.
He has some of the best outfits.
Is she laughing at you? Is your wife laughing at you?
She is. I guess it's on a delay, so she's laughing at whatever you're doing to make fun of me. It's fun. So just keep doing it.
So maybe you can't quite see
yeah,
her,
it's
but
blue. It's this beautiful blue. Yeah, I remember that.
Of course you remember that. Everybody remembers that one. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, she has Can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
If you had asked me about her dress, I might have been able to answer that because she has the most beautiful dresses in this movie. Every time she pops into a scene, where she dresses like for the horse for this thing, she winds up looking like a princess. He really they really costuming did an incredible job.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so if you thought that was bad.
Oh boy.
So in the scene with the nannies flying away, there's a dog, and the dog backs up and he hides a little bit. He comes back later to tell her about Uncle Albert, and he talks to her for a good couple of minutes or a minute or whatever. What's the dog's name?
Oh, I know this.
Do you? Okay.
I do know the dog's name. I remember the dog's name is.
Are you? Don't get
No,
help.
I'm not googling it.
Don't phone a friend.
I'm looking right at the screen. No, I don't know. I thought I knew. It was on the tip of my tongue.
Andrew.
Oh, really?
Random, right?
Like Win or something like that. Yeah.
No,
okay.
it's Andrew. It's Andrew.
I didn't know.
Do you know George Banks' middle initial?
F.
Close. W. What about?
I haven't seen this movie at all. Actually, I'm just lying. Never seen it. What show is this?
Okay, this is something. This
I
is.
thought I was interviewing with Joe Rogan today. Who are you?
No, this is your McDonald's application interview. So far, it's not going so well. We are not loving it.
Well.
I mentioned this name before. It should be easy because I mentioned it before. What was the name of the first nanny who left?
Oh, it was like Nanny Ann or Nanny.
Exactly, Katie.
Nanny Annie.
Katie Nana. Exactly, you named it.
Nanny.
And so this one, we'll bail out of this. But the last thing is really not more. It's more of a trivia. As
How are the people in the chat doing? Are they doing better than I am? At least.
Kind of nailing it. Neko's like kind of nailing it.
Yeah, Neko rules your show. Yes. Neko is better at this show than any of us.
It's all good. I was going to ask you what the Admiral's first mate was, but we're not going there because I don't. If you didn't know it was Admiral Boom, you're not going to remember his name. But there was an interesting piece of furniture.
Smithers, was it?
It's Binnacle. You would not have gotten that. Binnacle.
Binnacle.
Binnacle. I'm curious though. What was their relationship? Like, did he work for the Admiral, or like were they best friends?
Oh yeah, he was like he worked for him because remember there's a scene where he's making him wash his windows while
he sits and watches.
Boone is yelling down at Mr. Banks, and
Yeah.
Binnacle's there literally cleaning the dude's windows while he's yelling commands at him. It was not a good relationship, dude. He was a slave.
All right, here's a piece of information. This is not a trivia question for you, but there's a piece there at D23 Expo when they rolled out Mary Poppins Returns. They said there was one piece of furniture that they had actually secured from the original movie that they used in the sequel, and it was the little table in the foyer was used in both movies. So that's like literally the only keystone between the two, other than the actors, between the two movies. So I thought that was neat. One last question. This is it. This is the last question, and maybe you should be able to answer this. I hope you are, because our people are Parks fans.
I hope so.
Our people are Parks fans.
Okay.
There once was, long ago, I still shed a tear every time I talk about it, an attraction beyond belief called the Great Movie Ride. In the Great Movie Ride, there was a scene from Mary Poppins. What song did Mary and Bert sing in that scene in the Great Movie Ride?
I want to say it was "Let's Go Fly a Kite."
Why would you say that?
Because that's the fun scene in the movie. That's the scene. Tell me is that not right?
No, the scene is she's with her umbrella. He's up on the rooftop by the chimneys. Take another guess?
Oh, is it Chim Chim Chiru then?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very solemn version of it as she's floating up and down. But no, you're right. It is kind of the big like, the final scene.
Because the ride for me was fun. I remember the ride. The ride was gone so long ago, and I only went on it as a small child. So, but I remember the ride being fun, and I wanted it to be "Let's Go Fly a Kite" because that's one of the most fun songs in the movie.
So maybe you've already answered this question as we move on from trivia. So thank you guys for playing. I appreciate it. Thank you for putting up with that, Malika. This is great. So the music, totally taking you to school. So So the music, the Sherman Brothers were gods. I mean, all the music that they did, all the music that survives in the parks, all the music that they did for all the movies, just fantastic. So this soundtrack is just, again, watching it over and over, or watching it this time, is just one hit after another. So my question is, what do you think is the best song? I mean, is it "Let's Go Fly a Kite"? Is that the one that like means the most to you?
I think that's the most fun song in the movie. I think the signature song in the movie is probably "Supercalifragilistic," because that's the song. First of all, that's the one that people wind up singing when you think of Mary Poppins, because it's that silly made up word that kind of signifies the movie, which kind of signifies Mary Poppins and who she is and what she was. Um, so I would say that either one of those. If you were gonna say sing a song for Mary Poppins, it would be one of those that popped into my head right off the bat. So I think I can probably hit the notes and "Let's Go Fly a Kite" sooner than I can do "Supercalifragilistic," though. So,
The floor is yours.
oh yeah, oh yeah, da 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 da. All right,
I
that's
mean,
okay.
it's the one you walk away with.
You want
Like,
to keep viewers. You don't want to turn viewers away.
it's fine. There are so many good ones. I mean, here's the thing for me is that when I hear it, I think of Jolly Holiday because it's the Jolly Holiday with Mary, because I think of Mary Poppins, and so I think of those two together.
Okay.
Which may be weird. And
Yeah.
again, maybe it's just because of the animated stuff is my favorite. Maybe it's because we see more clips of the animated scenes than we do of any others. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it certainly
I think
isn't.
as far as showing clips, like clips you see a lot of, Chim Chim Charu is one that pops up. When the Disney Channel was all you could get, when
Man,
that
you're
was the
old.
thing. I remember watching the Disney Channel, and like they would show little Disney movie clips. Chim Chim Charu would pop up a lot, and that was one where it was fun to watch because the choreography in that scene was so awesome. You got the tap and you got the shadow dancing and the song. It just everything about that was really fun. So as far as all as a unit, that song is great. But I think as far as songs like you might listen to in the car, or songs that you might want to have your kid listen to on repeat a gazillion times over, a spoonful of sugar, or supercalifragilistic probably are the ones that probably get the most play, in my opinion.
I'm seeing in the chat, feed the birds. I love to
Ooh,
laugh.
ooh, yeah.
Chim Chim Cheree, Jolly Holiday. So I mean, it seems like everybody kind of almost takes away something different. Um, and Desi's asking, is there a best song? Because they're all good. I agree. I mean, they are all good, but I think everybody seems to have one maybe that they gravitate to more than another. But here, going back to what we started with, when you first started, you teased the fact that there was one that you didn't remember being in there. What was that song?
That was the first one you just said here. Somebody said it in the chat, and I hope I don't. I don't want to. I mean, if it's your favorite song, it's your favorite song. But "Feed the Birds," the Tuppence song, that one felt so strange to me this time around when I watched the movie. It felt like a passion song that got inserted into the movie at the last minute, and it didn't quite fit with the tone, particularly with where it was in the movie. And I just remember just a couple nights ago watching the movie thinking, wow, that was a strange choice.
You know what?
So
There are a
yeah, I
lot
don't
of
know.
dark periods in this movie, right? So that's a dark period if you think about it, because it's her talking about this woman and she's homeless, but she's out there and she's feeding the birds. I think it's just maybe assumed she's homeless. She doesn't necessarily say that, but so she's,
Right.
there's that is out there, and then there's a scene where the run on the bank, and the kids don't know what to do, and that's scary, and they're trying to get away,
Yeah.
and they run through the city. That's a scene, the running through the city, that I don't know that I saw before or realized or thought about, and it's got a lot of matte paintings and scenes. That one to me, again, is very dark, very scary for a G movie. I would think of the time. And then when he loses his job and he does that midnight walk to the bank, all three of those scenes are just so, like I said, there's
Yeah.
drama, there's comedy.
That's a brutal, 30, 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So again, you take this 2.5 hour movie, and you know what, Rob, you and I, we go to the editing room, chop that 45 minutes out, boom, You know, suddenly it's 45 minutes shorter. You got a happier movie. It's a shorter movie. Money in the bank.
Kind of
Everyone's
like,
happy.
kind of like on the show Friends, where where Phoebe's mom never showed her the end of any movie or the bad parts of any movie, so she didn't know. Yeah, like we'll take about all the
Right.
sadness, we'll just replace it with more of this. Lots more of Dick Van Dyke in
Yes.
hammer pants. That's really
More hammer pants
that's
and
really
penguins, please.
yeah. Let's start the hashtag more hammer pants. No, let's not do that. That's crazy. I just like when he did that again.
Right.
It's a neat effect when he does that and pulls the pants around his ankles, and it's like then he's doing the dance with the penguins in tuxedos, which again is really a smart
Yeah.
thing. And when you see those characters, which is rare, but when you see those characters in the park, that's kind of a cool thing to see. So there are a
I
lot of
just gotta
fun
say,
scenes.
not enough of this conversation has been dedicated to the comedic genius of Dick Van Dyke. He absolutely killed this movie.
So
He
so
was hilarious in every scene that he was in.
So let's go back to the top of cast, because I promised we would talk about cast. So Julie Andrews, they were fighting to get Julie Andrews. This was around the same time as Sound of Music. So good Lord, the movies that she did in that span. And now Disney owns Sound of Music too, so they're side by side on Disney Plus, which is really cool. But she was 20 years old when she did this. Do you know of a 20-year-old that could carry a movie of this magnitude today?
No, that's a big ask. That's a big ask. And you know what? And she did it. Like she carried this movie like she'd done a million other movies for Disney at the time. She's just this. She was a natural for it. And of course, as a kid, I don't know what 20-year-old is as a kid. Watching this movie, I mean, she was perfect. She was angelic. She was, beautiful and motherly and kind and pretty and so sweet and caring, and just everything about it was just. I mean, like I said, she was my first crush in a Disney movie, and I didn't know why. I didn't understand the feeling I was getting when I watched this movie, because she was everything that she could have possibly been. I don't think they could have cast a better Mary Poppins. In fact, I can't imagine anybody else in that role.
Not even,
And I
I
know
don't
they
know,
were
Emily
looking at other
Blunt?
people.
Not even Emily Blunt.
Yeah, no, definitely not Emily Blunt.
Who else? I'm sure you did some research. Who else did they consider? Anybody who was notable or we would know today?
Well, there was a fight for her in this movie at the time, right? Because she was. Hold on, honey. What was the other movie she was up for at the time? My wife was just here. She left. She left me for just a second ago.
It
We were
happens.
just talking about this a second ago.
Okay.
But Julie Andrews was actually might not have been available for this movie at the time, because she had been in the Broadway production of another movie that was about to be cast into a movie, and she didn't get the part, and so she wound up being cast as Mary Poppins, and thank God, because this was the better role for her, I think. So it'll come to me in a second. We'll come back to that, but.
Well, guess what? Neko's on it. She's going to figure it out.
Yeah,
But
thanks.
anyway, so yeah, I just look at her
My Fair
and
Lady. Thank you, My Fair Lady.
ah,
So Julie Andrews had been in the Broadway production of My Fair Lady, and that was about to be a movie production, and she wanted the part. Obviously, that was the perfect fit for her,
Eliza Doolittle.
but the director didn't cast her as Eliza Doolittle, and it was like that's a big slap in the face, right? It's like, what do you mean you're not going to cast Julie Andrews, the Broadway? So she didn't get the part, and she wound up thanking actually the director for not casting her when she went up to grab all of her Oscar gold for Mary Poppins. She's like, by the way, thanks for not casting me as Eliza Doolittle, because here I am with my fistful of Oscars, which was pretty awesome. So
Well, and it's amazing that I mean she's still doing some work today. She's done some voice work, which has been great in like Shrek movies and things like that. I think she's just legendary, and I had the privilege of meeting her once, and I got a picture, and the picture got corrupted, and so I literally have no proof other than I had her sign a book
ah,
for my son, which was like a children's book she wrote. And she signed it, so I have that. And I have the memories. I have my mind pictures.
that's pretty
But
awesome.
yeah, it was pretty neat to be able to meet her. But yeah, 20 years old and carries this movie is amazing. But yeah, like you said, Dick Van Dyke, not British, playing a British dude, talented guy. The dancing is amazing. The comedy is amazing. And him as Mr. Dawes Sr. is so good. Like, you look at like a Martin Lawrence or Mike Myers or somebody who's trying to do another character, and you're like, oh, that's Mike Myers in fat makeup. But like with this, he was so good that I think no one knew it was him until they do that scramble at the end of the movie and show you the letters and that it's Dick Van Dyke.
I remember I told you at the beginning of the interview, there were moments in the movie that I had read where the kids in the movie were not told that certain things were happening in the movie. And this was one of those things where they were supposedly not told. I was read that Dick Van Dyke was playing Mr. Dawes. So when he came out and he played the old man, they genuinely thought this was this frail old man that was falling over and was I mean, they didn't know it was him. So, you know, their faces, their poor faces, this poor man who's falling over and looking for tuppence. You know, you could see it in their faces. I genuinely thought that they probably thought this poor little old man was going to fall over right there and die.
Well, he did a great job with that. He did an amazing job with like the dancing. I feel like maybe even the dancers for the Step in Time were almost mirroring his style, because they looked very like, you know, the stuff that he was doing is very much like, I look at it and think that looks like Dick Van Dyke taught all the rest of them the moves, which he may have. But and then the fact that he comes back in Mary Poppins Returns as, you know, Mr. Dawes Jr. and is just and is amazing, and he's 95 and she's 85, and it's awesome. David Tomlinson, I don't think he gets enough credit, and here's why. He has been in he obviously passed away, but he had been in a bunch of movies, including Bedknobs and Broomsticks that we talked about earlier, and The Love Bug as Peter Thorndike. And so in this movie, he kind of is almost like a villain at the beginning, right? Because he's like, you know, kids don't do that, and we're going to get a stern, you know, we're going to get a stern nanny, and Mary Poppins, you're horrible, and I'm going to dismiss her, and what are you doing here? But there's this moment when Bert is singing to him Spoonful of Sugar, and he's like, yeah, it's like this dark, deep reverse psychology that he's doing on Mr. Banks about Mary, and then the kids come and they put the tuppence in his hand and say, will this fix everything, Father? And then just the look on his just the emotion that David Tomlinson had at that scene brought me into it, and almost just brought me to tears.
Yeah, his transformation throughout the movie is probably, again, we talked about this at the beginning, you know, as a kid, on the surface level, it's this adventure film for kids. But as an adult, you know, with real world problems in your head, going to see this movie, you know, Mr. Banks carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. And, you know, the way he gets through that is by thinking that he rules the world. And of course, you find out that he genuinely has no control over anything in his life. And at the end of the movie, he finally takes control of something. And it's something that he cares the most about, which is his children. And it's probably the best thing that can happen in a Disney movie is, you know, when a family comes together. And it really is one of the most magical moments, you know, in the movie, when he just genuinely just turns around and realizes the most important and the wealthiest thing he has in his life is his kids. It was such a cool moment. I agree with you. That was awesome, and he played that so well.
Yeah, and you know, I think Glynis John does a great job in this. As I think that without her personality, you know, kind of balancing him in the beginning, he would have been almost an ogre at that point. And so I think that she plays a very important part in that movie as well. But what's really neat is, like you said, at the end they kind of end up as a happy family, which in a Disney movie doesn't always happen, because there's usually an absent parent in some way, shape, or form that dies or leaves or
usually they
was
get
never
killed
there
in the beginning of the movie, right?
Yeah.
That's the Disney thing.
Yeah, that's the Disney way. So you know, that's a little tough, but you know, it just is, to me, an amazing you know, cast. And then the kids, I think, are very, very great in their roles as well. You got Karen Datras as Jane and Matthew Garber as Michael. But the sad part is, so Karen was in the sequel. She had a small role, I think, in the sequel. And Dick Van Dyke was in the sequel as well. But Michael died at 21, which is...
Yeah, I wound up looking to see what happened to him, and I read that too. His story is a tragic one.
Yeah, it was a pancreatitis issue in 1977. Some people thought it was drugs. His brother said it was not. But yeah, I mean, Bobby Driscoll, same thing, died at a very young age. The actor who was Peter Pan. Which just some Disney tragedy going on there. But yeah, that was heartbreaking. The Constable, played by Arthur Treacher,
Yeah.
and I thought to myself, this couldn't possibly be the same Arthur Treacher as the seafood restaurant, and apparently it is. Like there were 900 of these things. It was kind of like Long John Silver's or Jack in the Box,
Hmm.
and it was Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips, and it was a big thing. And apparently, just to make a little money, he put his name on it. There was like question as to whether he was invested in it or not, but it was literally this guy who was the constable, and there were 900 restaurants, and there's one left. There's one, and it's in Ohio. How about that?
All right.
How
Road
about that?
trip.
You come up with yeah,
Go
right.
Ohio, everyone.
You come up with My Fair Lady, and I come up with Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. Um, and then finally, again, like the Sherman Brothers are the uncast characters of this. This music is so timeless. It's in no time. It's not 1900s. It's not 1960s. It's just perfect. I feel like, and all the music, and as we talked about with the folks in chat, and which one's your favorite. It's an amazing soundtrack, and it looks like from again watching Saving Mr. Banks that they kind of like sweatshop this thing together. Like they just sat and cranked it out, and there were at least a couple songs that were even not in this movie. And one of the special features when you go to watch this on Disney Plus, where they talk about the music, Richard Sherman credits Julie Andrews for "Spoonful of Sugar" because there was another song she thought was too somber, and they had to take it out, and so they wanted something to match her personality. So if they hadn't taken that out, they wouldn't have put that in. So there are at least a couple that were pulled. But it's an amazing bit of music, and without this music, this movie is. I don't know. I don't know what this movie is without this music, but it's really. I mean, it's a musical. It's very important, and I think that the Sherman Brothers get a lot of that.
I think the Sherman Brothers and this movie, for the most part, define the early years of what we today identify as the Disney brand. When we think about the pure fun and magic that is Disney, whether it's the Disney theme parks, whether it's the Disney classic movies, whether it's the Disney movies that we go and expect, to take our families to today and see and enjoy. A lot of that is built on the backs of movies like this, like Mary Poppins, or like the other ones we mentioned earlier in the show, because they had all of the stuff that Disney still does today, that surprise of magic, that nod to family values, that inside joke, that nod to kids, where it's like you and I are in on this, and parents don't necessarily know what's going on. And then again, the other side where, hey, parents, I get it, life is tough, but here's how it can be better. And it just takes people away to this moment, even for just 2.5 hours, where life can be really, really awesome. And, isn't that what entertainment is all about? That's what Disney movies have always been about. And I think that's what Walt Disney has always been so great for. That's why we love going to Disney parks. That's why we love going to Disney movies. That's why I spend all my money on everything with a capital D,
Yes. Yes to all these things. You couldn't have summed it up
Right?
any better. Yeah. So when this movie ends, the kids hand the tuppence to the dad, and it feels like that Willy Wonka scene, where he hands him the gobstopper, and then he kind of like wraps his hand around it, and it's like it means so much to him at that moment, and that's when Banks is found himself, and he goes to the bank, and he goes to the bank, and he gets fired, but he tells the joke. We even skipped over Uncle Albert and the joke where it came from, the whole wooden leg named Smith.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that whole scene is his kind of phoenix moment. He's rising from the ashes, where he's just, he's reborn, and then he goes and basically spends the night in the basement of his house, making the worst kite ever. But it's the thought that counts. And so then, he goes out with the kids and they fly the kite, and everything's happy. And but Mary has to leave, and the parrot talks for the first time and says, oh, you're gonna miss them. And it's an amazing journey that we go on, and the fact that Mary is so selfless in this whole thing of she comes in, she knows what she needs to do, she changes things. The one thing I have to add before we kind of cut away from all this and end everything, and again, thank you guys for watching, thanks for sticking with us. Please give us a thumbs up and let everybody else know about this, because we're having a lot of fun. But one thing that I look at is it's almost an evil thing where Mary knows something bad's going to happen if she sends the kids with Banks to the bank, but she does. And so she puts all of these things in motion seemingly purposefully, tells them about, hey, there's going to be a woman on the stairs. Make sure you just fight with your dad to give her some money. And then, when you get to the bank, your dad doesn't see that the woman is there. And so, but she tricks him into taking the kids. So it feels like it's a very calculated move when you back away from it at 30,000 feet. Am I wrong on this?
No, I agree with you. I think you're right. She definitely put that plan into motion, and it's a terrible thing to do to them because Mr. Banks loses his jobs, the kids get lost in this ugly part of the city. Old man falls down. Like, there's a lot of things that happen there that didn't need to happen.
Run on the bank.
But I mean, in the end, it's for the good. But I don't know. Would they have been better off maybe if they didn't go to the bank that day?
Yeah, I mean, it's very Marvel cinematic universe, the timeline, the multiverse. What if they didn't go to the bank?
Yeah.
What if instead they just had another outing to the park? Who knows? So she definitely knew what she was doing. She made these arrangements. Things happened, and you're right, they did all fall into place. Not only does he get his job back, but he's got a promotion. The family has been reunited. He has a new focus on what's important, and the only one that really loses out is kind of Mary, who knows she has to go and leave and go on, to the next adventure. So yeah, it does.
As a kid, I remember being confused by the again, back to the woman with the birds. As a kid, I almost thought that Mary Poppins was the woman with the birds. Like, for some reason, I thought she was in costume or something like that. The scene was confusing to me. I still stand that whole scene could have been ejected from the movie and saved everyone 15 minutes of movie time.
Well, when we recut it, it'll be the McDonald cut,
right?
And yeah, and that's how it's going to work. So this movie has permeated the Disney universe, but it is interesting to me, having been to Disneyland recently, that Disneyland feels more like a Mary park, and maybe that's just because Walt had such a love for this, and this was his passion project to make this happen. But when you're in California, there seems to be more calls to Mary Poppins in Disneyland than there is in Disney World. You've got the Jolly Holiday Bakery, the Mary's Horse on the carousel. The music that you hear around the park is, there's a lot more Mary Poppins music, it feels like. So that feels more like that's Mary's park. I feel like Mary Alice and Jack Skellington are bigger out there in California than they are in Florida. It could just be me reading into it. But we had the great movie ride scene. That's gone in Florida. We were supposed to get a Cherry Tree Lane. That got canceled because, we'll say, COVID. So I mean, but there is still a presence of that in the parks. Like I said, everybody has a favorite song. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Most people know that, whether they've seen the movie or not. And then it had a stage musical. Which, why did it take so long to make this a stage musical? Good golly!
It seems like it was written for that, right? And then I don't understand why it didn't last. I feel like it should still be a Broadway. I mean, worse productions have lasted on Broadway. Hello,
yes.
Cats.
Wow. Coming at Cats. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I never got a chance to see Tarzan on Broadway. I never got a chance to see Mermaid on Broadway. I did see the touring company of that one. I didn't get a chance to see Frozen on Broadway. And so, there's a lot of those. I did see Beauty. I did see Lion King. I saw a touring of Newsies. No, I've never seen Newsies on Broadway, or even touring, I don't think, but I did see a touring of Mary. So I do like to see those things, the stage productions. But when the stage production of Mary started,
Yeah.
I was like, why did it take so long? It feels like it should have been there forever. And then, of course, there was Saving Mr. Banks. There's The Boys, which is a documentary about the Sherman Brothers, which obviously talks, a little bit about their time doing Mary, and then there's the sequel, Mary Poppins Returns. So many offshoots of this that exist out there. When you pull it up in Disney Plus, you're going to see a lot of that. So, is there anything we missed before we go into our final on this movie? Anything that you wanted to talk about we didn't cover?
I just want to throw a shout out to Ed Wynn. We didn't talk about his moment in the film. It's the laughing scene. He's the guy. He's the Uncle Albert who laughs up into the ceiling. It's a real silly scene. It's one of those scenes that probably didn't need to be in the movie, but I mean, it's Ed Wynn. I mean, the guy is a legendary comedian. He had a really funny scene in the movie, and I'm glad that it was in there because I forgot that he was in the movie, but when I saw it again this past week, I was so happy to see it there.
Yeah, it's like you can't hear his voice and not hear the Mad Hatter. I mean, it's just
exactly. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And I went and looked him up to see if he had done other voices, because I feel like kind of like Sterling Holloway had done like several voices for Disney, most notably obviously Winnie the Pooh, but I thought maybe Ed Wynn had done more, but he was the Hatter, and that was it, and he was perfect. Yeah. So I agree. And
he felt like he was a bigger presence in Disney, but that one character is so big that was enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you guys for watching. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Before we go into our final, I do want to mention one thing real quick, that we have an event that is coming virtually for the 50th anniversary of Disney World. So if you cannot get and be in Disney World, and again, travel, pandemic, all these things are a thing, we have a way for you to do that virtually. There is a ticket available, a virtual ticket that you can get at goldenjamboree.com, and you can get 2 days worth of panels and discussions and all kinds of cool things that are going to be taking place in Florida with just special guests, Imagineers, producers of the shows. It's going to be an amazing thing. It's a cheap ticket to get. Go to goldenjamboree.com, and then you can watch it as many times as you want to for a month. I think it's a month, and maybe 30 to 45 days. I can't remember exactly, but all the information is at goldenjamboree.com, so check it out. I don't suppose you're going to be in Florida for Disney's 50th, Maleko.
I'd love to. Love to, man. We haven't been to Disney obviously since the pandemic, but we try to go to Disney at least once every couple of years, and of course because of the pandemic, it's been at least a couple of years. So we're looking forward to safely being able to do that soon. The 50th anniversary lasts a year, so anything can happen.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I can just imagine though that when you go now, all of our followers will know who you are, and you'll just have to line up for autographs and selfies.
That's it. Meet me at the pin trading booth. I'll be there.
All right, so we've talked about this movie. You chose this movie. We talked about this movie. You've gone back and rewatched this movie, but now is the time I need to ask you, Maleko McDonald. Would you recommend this movie?
Absolutely. I highly recommend Mary Poppins. Any Disney fan cannot call themselves a true Disney fan unless they can fully sing at least 2 songs from the movie Mary Poppins, and at least describe the plot to anyone else. Disney's magic was built on the backs of Mary Poppins. Definitely go see this movie. Watch it again. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I didn't mean to push you out so quickly. I agree with you. Yeah, you're like, sorry. Here, no, we'll do this. I was
no, forget it.
I thought I was I thought I was cueing it. It's fine. And we're all fine. Everything's fine. We just want to jump in that picture is all that there is going on there. So I agree with you. I mean, again, some of the litmus tests I use with these are, do you need to know it? if you are going to Disney parks or to be a Disney fan. Yeah, you kind of do. It's a big deal. You know, I think not only do you watch this, but then you go back and you watch Saving Mr. Banks, because again, that movie it was something we're going to talk about at some point here on Deep in the Plus, because it was a very well done telling, and Tom Hanks is everything as Walt Disney.
I got to
And
go
then,
see it now because honestly, I didn't see that one, and I don't know how I missed that one. That was one that just
okay, you're out
my
again.
life was happening at the moment.
You're out
So,
again. You're out again. Sorry. You haven't seen that movie. I cannot believe that happened. I'm sorry, folks. It's technical difficulties. I don't know what happened. But when this movie is just such a big part of the come back in, dude. Is such a big part of the Disney community. It's one that you have to watch, and I think it stands up. Come on, man. I think it stands up. I think it stands the test of time, which is always important, too. There are movies you go back and go, I'm not sure this is what I remember it as. This one is that good. So if you haven't watched it all the way through, if we haven't spoiled it for you by this point, I feel like you need to go watch it. Watch it again if you haven't seen it in a while. Treat yourself to this one, Saving Mr. Banks, and then maybe Mary Poppins Returns. And we'll talk about that movie again at another time. So, my friend, thank you again so much for taking some time this afternoon where you are. And
thank you very much. Thanks again for always being so kind and welcoming to me, Rob, and patient with me and you know my novice Disney knowledge. And thanks to your fans. I mean, the people who join us in the chat, they're always so knowledgeable and so kind with their information. Thanks for being tolerant with me as well. I really like watching the show. I love learning while I'm here, and I'm a Disney fan. As much as I can be, and so I like surrounding myself with people who are much bigger Disney fans than I am. So thanks.
Well, thanks to you. Thanks to your wife for sharing her time with us, and also for bringing you into the Stitch universe like she did. So thanks for that, and thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. We will see you. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to tease one more thing. Next week we will be doing Remember the Titans with Patrick Hackett. And the week after that will be Sorcerer's Apprentice. And the week after that, we're getting into spooky season, and we're doing Twitches. That's going to happen. Get ready, folks. Thanks a lot. Have a great time.
Sweet.
Have a great week, and we will see you next time.
Aloha.